So this will be recorded. It's just recording the slides and Mahid that is in the chat, so that if you have questions or you would like to rewatch this or share this impacts of gardening on health and well-being, then I can send you the link. Also, as I mentioned, I dropped Carmita Smiles website link in the chat. There you can also find replays of talks in the Carmita Smiles community. It is a complimentary free community for you to join, where you can get replays of different talks that we do and videos that you maybe find on like Instagram or YouTube and things that I do, and class replays and some special stuff like how to like use props. I start talking about holistic medicine. I have group kind of group sessions that'll be starting in May, that just give us time to come together and collab and discuss whatever's on your mind related to wellness. Let's get started. Move all this stuff out of. So I may pause depending if I see someone who's trying to get in and I need to let them into the group, the chat. So I do apologize for that, but they should pop up on my screen if so. But so this is our monthly meetup. So once a month, I take time and figure out a theme to share that hopefully people are interested in, to discuss that are kind of creative ways to think about wellness. And so this month, the talk is wellness through gardening. And there are different ways to say this kind of the same thing. So they have therapy gardens, well-being gardens, therapeutic gardening, and they all are pretty much focusing in on how gardening is beneficial for your wellness. And to give a little bit more about who I am Carmita Smiles, aka Carmen. I'm a 500-hour yoga instructor. I got certified with my Vinyasa practice based out of Austin, Texas. I'm also a naturalist and earth buddy. So I've been teaching yoga for 7 years plus. I started teaching dog yoga while I was running my pet care business in Columbus, Ohio, up until the pandemic. And then I transitioned to human yoga. And since then, I've expanded my skills and experiences to being an advocate and ambassador for natural living, Reiki, and holistic medicine. So if you have questions that are maybe unrelated to the gardening or something related to the Reiki or holistic medicine or whatnot, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I am available even when we are not in these groups connecting, but you know, just hanging around, like I said, mainly on the Instagram, you can find me and reach out. So, and today the topic of discussions, we'll talk quickly on the mental health of gardening, physical health of gardening, getting started, how to begin your wellness garden, gardens versus green space, plants and kinds of plants that maybe we can discuss that you would like to see in your garden. I would love this to be an interactive kind of discussion or meetup. So at any time when I'm done going through a slide, feel free to, if you have a question, drop it in the chat. I will check the chat, or you know, if you raise your hand or something, then, you know, I'll ask you can unmute yourself and ask the question, and then I'll also leave time at the end.
Hello, everybody. It is Bill Smith here, and I just wanted to say that I'm here. I just wanted to make sure that everybody.
All right, well, there we go.
Why do you unmute me? I'll Hey, no.
Hi, please, could you pause and mute yourself? That would be great.
Pause and mute myself. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't kick me out. I actually want to be in the meeting though. Okay, Carmita. Hello. You there?
I think he's a Zoom bomber. I think you should kick him.
Yeah, we are doing the thing. That's all right.
Oh.
All right, just give Zoom 1 second. There we go. All right, there we go. Yes, they are still a theme, as I mentioned earlier. So thank you for your patience with that. No matter how many precautions and security things, you know, it still takes Zoom and a group of humans to find these people and then kick them out. So, but the topics of discussion today will also touch are on green space, plants, and other benefits. of the wellness gardening. So jumping off from the bat, you are welcome to unmute yourself and let me know if there's anyone here that already has experiences with gardening and or specific gardening related to the topic today, well-being, wellness, or therapy gardening. If you would like to just kind of share your experience with gardening or even what you're hoping to get out of this session related to that, feel free to share, or I will continue to move on. All right, keep it moving so that we do have time at the end. So I'm going to start diving right in with the mental benefits of gardening. A big thing with the meetup group is that it allows us to come together and discuss what is going on with us, discuss different events going on in our communities, and discuss what's going on with our mental health and well-being. A big part of that group is not only supplying times for us to meet during yoga that I teach virtually, but also just to get together and kind of talk about what's going on in life, because a big part of that is that we just need to sometimes to share with one another and kind of connect. So we have Laura, thanks for your message. You are a recreational therapist from Canada. Oh, hello. I'd love to know, are you still in Canada? Hoping to implement gardening programs with the clients. Happy to be here, thanks. We are happy to have you. That's awesome. So yeah, whether you're still in Canada or not, that's super awesome that you are here joining us. And recreational therapist, I'd love to hear your thoughts at the end of your knowledge and experience with wellness gardening. So we'll definitely can discuss some different programs, and or I have lots of examples of the types of gardening that are available, and something that is available to no matter where they live, if they have a small space, a large space, and then we'll get a little bit into community gardening. But thank you, Laura. For the mental benefits, as I mentioned, we'll dive right in. So there are plenty of mental benefits to well-being and gardening. Also, as I mentioned, green spaces. So even if you are someone who does not have the space or time possibly to garden yourself, around a lot of, especially in metropolitan cities and a lot of different towns and communities, there are community gardens or green spaces. Green spaces are not necessarily traditional gardens where you have, your area and the dirt, you have your lettuces, your flowers, your whatnot, but green spaces are just areas where they're allowing a place of relaxation and rest. They may just be a place with a few chairs and a TV, or if it's outdoors, it might be like some nice patio furniture set up, or a green space and probably like a condominium or public shared space downtown. And I mentioned these are very popular in the cities now because we kind of live in this concrete jungle or concrete forest where we have sidewalks and streets, and we're boxed in for quite a bit of our day, unless maybe you work outdoors. So they're bringing walls of flowers, walls of plant life into communities. They're building and putting effort. I know in Cleveland in the Northeast Ohio was known as Forest City. So Cleveland is taking the time to place trees back in to the city and create more green spaces indoors and outside for people to just go and rest. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the traditional garden, and we'll get a little bit more into that later. But with the mental benefits of this, and why communities are even starting to get back to the importance of gardening and adding green space, is that just from stepping out of your house or your place of work or your car or traffic or whatever, and allowing yourself to move into a place with greenery and plants and flowers, it can instantly start to improve the mood. It can also increase quality of life and outlook. And these are just from visual standpoints. So moving from places that are high energy, high impact, a lot of hustle and bustle, to places that are kind of bring a sense of overwhelming peace and calm. You get to instantly connect to nature. Mental and also this could be doubled as physical benefits of gardening are stress and anxiety release, which can in a physical aspect and degree relate to our cortisol, which I'll touch on in a bit also. but it can really be just displacing oneself from just so much activity. We have these calendars and schedules that we're sticking to. We have different to-dos and tasks and deadlines. And it can really go back to just needing to take a moment, whether it's a minute, 5 minutes, or one day out the week or month, to allow yourself to connect not only with gardens and green space, but even just nature. There's a quote that I saved at the end that kind of mentions and talks about how we are animals also. And with that, we're part of the system. So our bodies and mind have not necessarily caught up to all the technology and movement and things that we have going on. And it can be very stressful on our system. We also have like great change within our flight and fight systems. So those systems going back to our ancient ancestors, where we had fight or flight, where we were battling to survive. We were integrated into that animalistic system so much that, you know, we were part of it. We had to protect ourselves, protect our communities, our tribes. And so now our fight and flight has changed. And a lot of people that I talk with and in different communities talk about how it's kind of this uncertain, there's this uncertainty in regulation. Like, how do we regulate? How do we control these stresses and anxieties, these day-to-day things that we're not actively seeing, but that we're still feeling in our bodies due to these deadlines and hectic activities? So allowing yourself to be removed from those things for even just a moment and find yourself in a garden or green space or gardening yourself helps you to tune in and help relieve that stress and anxiety, which can also go into decreasing depression. A lot of articles that I found were related to the pandemic and all of us being indoors a lot in uncertain times. And it caused a lot of sadness and depression and disruption to daily life, to communities, to families, especially if, you know, you lived in an apartment complex and you're very close on with your neighbors. And so gardening and getting out of that space, that concrete jungle, allows and decreases depression and improves the mood and just well-being, which can then also help improve sleep, which can also be related to the cortisol levels. And with gardening or even working on your own green space, it can help with enhanced memory retention and helps combat dementia. You're focused in on the present moment. You're working with the dirt or the plants or the food or whatever you choose to grow in your garden. And it helps your memory. You're working your brain, you're working that consciousness. And you start to find patterns and things. You're learning the plants that you're gardening. You're learning how to do these things. And in gardening, it's kind of this pattern of, you know, you're sowing the seeds, you're putting the thing in the dirt, you're growing the thing in the dirt, you're repeatedly watering it. So you're building this pattern, then you're collecting the crops, or maybe you're cutting the flowers for someone else, and then you do it again. So depending on how much you're gardening, so that can help with memory retention. And for those who are looking to maybe get outdoors or connect with their local neighbor or communities, gardening can help with social connection. That's another thing in a lot of the metropolitan cities and even some small towns and schools are welcoming social connection. We are social creatures. We are pack animals. Humans are not meant to live in isolation. And so we get these lovely social connection opportunities from gardening, whether it's with your neighbor who maybe has some flowers and you're curious to what their flowers are doing or what type of flowers they're growing, into joining a community garden where there's limited space. People are taking initiative to get permits or start community gardens and allow people to come together of all ages and backgrounds and be welcomed into gardening, because anyone can do gardening. It just takes time and patience, and it's a learning process. And typically with community gardens, everyone has all this different knowledge that they're bringing together, and it gives this lovely sense of well-being and connection, which deep down many people are looking for, especially after something like the pandemic, where we were unable to gather so much with our close friends and neighbors. And then another one for the mental benefits is it can be gratifying. It can create a sense of you're accomplishing something, you're learning something, and you're building something that you have a part in. You are literally, like I mentioned earlier, you're putting those seeds in the ground, you're watching it grow, you're learning the processes, you're creating and caring for this living, breathing plant that then you get to enjoy. And it just gives a sense of accomplishment and gratification. And then also, so these top two kind of go together in a bit. So gardening can welcome you to the present moment, or even a green space can welcome you to a present moment. And not even with gardening, but just, there are many things that can welcome a person to the present moment. It's really just stepping away from the chaos or the activities or the things that are kind of have us mind-boggling. So gardening is one of many activities that welcomes that. Another might be walking through a park, walking through nature, a metro parks, or a trail. It all takes you into nature. It takes you into plant life. And you kind of start to leave everything off the table for a moment. And really with gardening, it brings you even more into the present moment because you are actively connecting to that nature. You're digging, you're weeding, you're pulling, you're cutting, you're mowing the grass, possibly. Some people like to welcome local beehives into their garden. So maybe you're tending and caring for the bees. That all welcomes your focus right here, right now. And so you're only kind of just working with what you have in that time, in that present moment, which can then also help to lower heart rate. It can help to lower that stress, that anxiety, and can reduce symptoms of ADHD and help, it welcomes that focus to the present moment. And then also going back to that gratification in relation is gardening is a learning opportunity with gratification and accomplishments. Gardening may not come easy for all. I have been gardening for years. I used to live with someone and they were an expert gardener. Not me so much. I had to start small with growing wheatgrass and little herbs in my kitchen. And then eventually I worked my way back up to larger plants and different flowers and things. And even though I made some mistakes along the way, it got me to connect with others. Once again, I got to ask people questions. I had friends and family who were great at gardening also. And I would ask them about the dirts and the soil and the plants and whatnot. And I would use those hints and tips and tricks to then kind of learn for my own. And I started seeing more progress, more accomplishment, more life in my gardens and plants. So it's going through and getting over those challenges and overcoming and seeing the success of that. So which then can build confidence. All right, if anyone has a share, you're welcome to drop it in the chat or you're welcome to ask any questions. Otherwise, I'll keep moving into the physical benefits. Time just flies with these things. So physical benefits of gardening. So instantly, if you're welcoming yourself to the sunshine, which if you live in the north, that is dire after fall and winter. We love the sun. I know I've been in Ohio for a bit and the sun was lovely to come out for that time because the sunshine can lower blood pressure. So if you're spending at least about 30 minutes or so and having activity under the sun, it can help lower your blood pressure and it also can increase your levels of vitamin D. Now, there are vitamins and supplements you can take, but there is nothing like those sun rays hitting the face that also helps to promote growth in the plant and flower life also. And then for humans, it also can help with dexterity. So because of the digging and the weeding and the things, it helps the dexterity and the movement in the hands and fingers. If you've ever joined one of my yoga classes, I talk about this, where it's so important since we do a lot of typing, we do a lot of texting and driving. It is so important to take that time to just connect with your hands and your feet and your toes and move and focus on moving or stretching those limbs. And it can also help combat with different circulation and blood flow and also combat and help the fight against arthritis. So, and then also physical strength, and it can help the strength in our body. We're working our muscles when we're gardening. If you're out in a garden, I know some people have those nice little stools that they have, and they're like these low stools to the ground, and they kind of just wheel from one side to the other and work on whatever they're working on in their yard or garden or green space. But if you're not using that stool, or even if you are, then you're also working your lower body. You're working your hips, you're working your glutes, you're getting squats in your quads, your arms, your upper body. And it's day to day, it's working different muscles, and it's working them differently depending on, are you digging today? Are you weeding today? Are you mowing the lawn today? So that's wonderful. That can help work your muscles. Now, some interesting things I came across with gardening and green spaces were some articles that discussed how gardens and green spaces can help reduce pain post surgeries and can actually help reduce the length of stays in hospitals. I came across a few articles that discuss how hospitals are actually working towards adding more green space along with artwork and classical music and different kind of activities and different visual and like sound appealing things that really allow you to almost leave your body, so to speak, for a moment and connect with your surroundings, especially those green spaces and plants and different artistic ways that those are built. And it helps the process. It helps to relieve that pain. It helps to calm the patients. And so there are many, many benefits there. And then related to the strength and body and working the muscles, gardening and building green spaces can be related to weight loss because it is physical activity. So also shooting back up to that 30 minutes. On average, many health professionals mention that you just need 30 minutes of activity a day or maybe every other day, and it can be beneficial for lowering blood pressure and the heart rate and getting you out and having that physical activity in the body. All right, I'm going to zoom back to something that I mentioned earlier. This is a huge kind of topic in my household. There's a lot of women, especially in my household, and we talk about our hormones, and we talk about cortisol, and we talk about belly fat and stomach fat. So going back to gardening can help reduce stress. And stress and anxiety can be related to the cortisol levels, which generally cortisol is not a bad thing. Cortisol is a hormone in the body, and it helps to regulate and reduce inflammation. It can help burn fat into energy, and it can leave someone waking up feeling refreshed. But going back to also the fight or flight and the way that we are today, a lot of humans and our schedules and different things happening, our hormones and cortisol levels can kind of get out of whack. And in relation to that fight or flight systems, because we can be under constant stress, or there can be underlying stresses that we are unaware of that can kind of throw our bodies into kind of a wacky place. And this can cause the body to actually, instead of helping burn that fat into energy, our body wants to hold on to that fat. And it can make it where it can lead to weight gain if we're constantly stressed, if we're in overwhelming environments, and then our cortisol levels kind of get all kind of wacky. So this can make it where we also then go to stress eating. So that is what can make someone crave sugar, salty, or fatty foods and go back to that stomach fat. So I mentioned women in my family. That is something where, for whatever the reason, it tends to be more prominent with females and or hormones. So gardening can be such a wonderful way to combat that, to help lower the stress, to help regulate our cortisol and our other hormones in our bodies, to help reduce inflammation, help to burn that fat, help us feel good, and come back to that focus in the present moment. All right, some other benefits before we dive into the different styles of gardens and green spaces is that there are benefits to not only us with gardening and green spaces, but also to Mother Gaia. Mother Gaia is just another way of saying Mother Earth or the Earth itself, because plants can breathe carbon dioxide and they release oxygen. We talked about that when I grew up in school a lot of the time, the importance of trees, how they would release and cleanse the air and give off this oxygen, and it was beneficial for us. So the more trees, the better. That also combats air pollution. if you go and you can Google this, there are tons of plants now that are trending all over social media and the internet that are wonderful to combat air pollution. They actually cleanse the air just as well as an air purifier, and it's a natural way to do it. And then we talk about carbon and different air pollution, which goes into the battle of climate change. So the temperatures are rising, but the trees and the plants and the grass protect the earth, they protect the ground. And so when we live, especially in metropolitan areas where we're getting rid of those trees, there's not as much coverage. We're just getting rid of that protection that's going to help keep the temperatures cooler. An example or experience of this is if you live in the city and you drive out to the country or even farm area, or you go to a metro park, you'll notice the temperature is lower. It might feel cooler when you're in those spaces and places. And that's because all of that life, that green life and trees and grass and dirt and woods and everything is there keeping the temperatures lower and keeping the ground more cool. Now, specifically to gardening, gardening also offers a chance for you to grow your own food and to share that food possibly with your local communities if you're doing a local garden, which also welcomes that social connection, which then allows you to make healthy choices because you're in charge of what you're putting in that garden. And typically, you know, we're not growing sugarcane for most of us in our gardens, especially in certain places around the US or in the states above or below, but we're typically growing things like herbs, rosemary, lavender. We're growing roots, we're growing, you know, potatoes or carrots or yams, or we're growing lettuce leaves and different things like that, or fruits, strawberries and melons. These are healthier options, even with the fruits that have their own natural sugars. Those are natural sugars that are good sugars in those fruits. So it's a wonderful thing to then you be able to choose what you're gardening, what you're growing, and be able to enjoy that food once it's grown. And depending on the type of garden and what you would like to supply to, it also can supply shelter and food for local bugs and wildlife. Not all bugs are bad. There are some that are pests. I know we have some invasive bugs. If you are into also like growing grapes for wine and things, they always talk about protecting the grapevines against different invasive bugs that come from different parts of the world, just because the way our world is today. But there are good things to have, like a praying mantis can be wonderful to have in the garden because they're going to eat a lot of those invasive bugs, especially the slugs and things that get in. Spiders are another one that can be very beneficial to gardens. They're going to help. Butterflies are going to help pollinate flowers. And then wildlife. We have where in some places they talk about battling the deer. I'm going to show a couple examples of what you can have in your garden that battles that or covers your garden to protect naturally against the deer. And then there's little animals though that like it for coverage, little birds, or I know bunnies, depending on what you're growing, can want to enjoy some of the treats in the garden, but it can also offer them shelter if you're doing like flowers and plants and things that aren't edible too. So, which is wonderful because once again, living in a concrete jungle or even out in the country, you know, some of these smaller creatures, they're prey animals and they look for protection from their predators. So gardens and plant life and green spaces can offer that protection from them. And then just here, another benefit to gardening and selecting what you would like to grow or have in your garden or green space is the benefits of having that green space, or even just like I mentioned, getting out to the parks. So during the pandemic, this was another thing that was trending quite a bit, was pine trees can offer relief of sinus and lung congestion. It stimulates lubricating and the antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties in your bodily systems. So if you go out and maybe you're kind of got some different allergies or things going on, if you walk in a park that has a lot of pine trees and pine needles, you'll notice that your body starts to release, maybe that mucus starts to break up just from breathing that in from pine trees. And then other plants and herbs have different benefits. Also, dandelions are a common plant across the world. They originated in Europe and made their way to the US, but they have visual benefits with the bright colors, that welcoming sign of spring and summer. And you can actually use them in internal benefits. They are loaded with vitamins, vitamin K, vitamin A, calcium, iron, and so much more. You can make dandelion teas. They are good for a detox. They are also a diuretic. You just can go on to Google once again, or you could reach out to me and I can let you know how to prepare those dandelions. I just came across a TikTok the other day and they were frying the dandelions and enjoying them. So I know fried food is always not the healthiest, but it was a fun way to enjoy the plant. And we have lavender, which is known to be soothing or calming. If you have lavender essential oils or lavender candles, just imagine if you grew all this lavender in a green space or in pots around your porch. That's another one that you'll find honeybees like, or bumblebees, and different dragonflies and butterflies tend to come around lavender. And then also, depending on which direction you go, even some of the more kind of unique plants like aloe vera plants and different green life have different benefits. Well, they sell aloe vera juice, they sell aloe vera water. You can also use aloe vera right from the plant to put on your scrapes and scars and burns, and it has so many benefits to it. So there's just a multi-sensory here and just so many different ways to enjoy your space and garden, not only from a mental and physical standpoint, but other benefits also. So it kind of goes full circle. So this was an article I found. I'll go back to this at the end if you have questions, but this article on The Guardian, how to plant a well-being garden. I specifically posted this here because it has a long list of different plant life that is in the benefits of it. So I'll get back to that at the end if we have time. But I want to jump into the examples. I already kind of touched on this, the green space versus the garden. Green spaces can be just areas indoors or outdoors that have lots of plants and grass and flowers and whatnot that help bring a sense of ease and calm and relaxation, versus the garden might be something that you are building on your own. You have the dirt, you have the different levels and different styles of gardens. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit more here too. So I'm going to start with this. These would be more examples of possible green spaces, but also thinking outside of the box of traditional gardening. We all live in so many different styles of living. We all have different houses or apartments or tiny homes or mobile homes. And so we're thinking about working with what we got. So your green space doesn't have to look exactly like these three examples, but these are just little ways and little things that you could pick from any or picture if you choose to get ideas on. Maybe you don't have time for a garden, but maybe you still like plants and you just want that green space to help your physical and mental benefits. Well, even if you're not doing a full-blown garden, you're still going to have to go and get the plants or get the seeds, put them in the dirt or transfer them into different pots. So you're still welcoming yourself to the moment. You're welcoming that focus. You're getting those physical and mental benefits that you would from traditional gardening here by building your green space. And these are just different ways that you could build your green space. It could be having plants on the floor, on the desk. It could be just a shelf of plants. I know that's what I have in my space. I just have a 3-tier shelf and it just has the plants, and I have to watch about what I plant and where I put it because I have prey creatures. I have guinea pigs and rabbits, and they will chew the plants. So I only have a few up high on the 3-tier. And that just alone, I love waking up and looking at the plants in the morning. I make sure there's no little bugs in there because I have the porch door open sometimes. I get to see how they're growing, and it brings back that sense of accomplishment and well-being. I also have on a dresser a tea tree plant that's growing. That has been a difficult experience, but I'm learning. It's starting to come back, and it's starting to grow those little branches and leaves, and so it's a wonderful lesson to learn. And I don't have the space covered. I just have those 2 areas, and it just brings such a sense of those benefits. So these are just wonderful ways and ideas to bring. There's a lot of these shelves that have those tiers. You can buy them or make them. I see some people use different like milk cargo crates, or people will use books and have them different levels or different wood shelves that they use to build. You can make it your own. This is the time to express yourself. Now, for those who would like to get into more of the traditional gardening and you're still working with certain spaces, or maybe you don't want to deal with the prey creatures and the deer eating up your fruits and veggies, and then you can always go, and there are various planters you could get. So you can end up at thrift store, you could end up at Home Depot, you could end up online, a local supermarket. There are so many different places now, especially in the seasons come, that sell or resell different potting materials. Another thing I like to do is also you can get very creative and use untraditional pots and bowls and tires and different things to use to also pot your plants in. I like to take old like vases and vases and like I'll put holes in the bottom so the water can drain, and I'll grow wheatgrass in those things, and then I'll give it as gifts to my family. And so you can get really creative, but it's really just finding, you know, what you would like to put your plants in. And if you're doing potted gardens and different things that are growing and they can grow high, then it can be nice to do things that won't carry over onto the porch and get in the way in the steps. So like tomatoes, if you're doing carrots, peppers are a good one, and certain lettuce leaves. So you want to think about it in that small space. If you don't want to be walking on something, like you might not want to do squash if you don't have the space, because squash is going to grow out and long. Watermelon is going to grow out and long. So it might get in the way of your space. But if you find yourself using pots and you find items that grow high and up, that's a good way to get your garden started, depending on your spaces and if you decide to use pots for your plants. All right, other ideas if you have small spaces or maybe you have a yard, but you want to keep your garden condensed, because the goal here is that you're just spending that time connecting with the plants, getting in nature. As you could get, they have these greenhouses. These have been very popular over the past few years. I've been seeing that Amazon sells them, eBay sells them. I've even seen them at Walmart for like $10, $20. They come in with the shelving. They come with this greenhouse cover, and it is like your own little greenhouse. And they have them from this size to between my hands and one layer to like 6 feet tall and extended out. So just depends on your space you're working with, but these can be handy when you are fighting against or combating against deer and different predator and prey and animals that you don't want in your garden. So little bugs may or may not get in, depending if you close the, you know, how you close up, because the doors and things and covers can be different, because some bugs are helpful. Like I had one of the friend, I allow the praying mantis to kind of scooch right in there because they're really cool to have in the garden. But it's a nice way to cover, especially if you're combating deer, so that they're not going to eat your vegetation and your plants. Another thing, when I was living in Columbus, on this left side, this netting, this is a safe way to protect your plants and the animals. How they have it tied up, and you have it tight, you have the little loops over, so the plants can still breathe. They're getting all that fresh air, but they're protected against the animals. And also the animals are not going to get tangled up in the cover. So those are different ideas for your garden too. And even with this style, so maybe you would think of having more of like bushes, or you might think of having more lettuces, because if you're doing a cover, you might worry about things that are growing tall and high. So now maybe depending on what you're working with, then you might think of plants that go down and long and low, or lettuces tend to kind of stay in bushels and little compacted areas as they grow, or strawberries. So that's something that may work well in that style of gardening. All right, some others, going back to just gardening or green spaces. If you find that you have more space in a little side yard, or maybe you have a rooftop gardening going where you're just looking to plant some flowers and not so much vegetation. This is just an idea at the top. This person added stones. So I've seen that's very popular. You can put stones and grass or ivy in the bottom of your garden, and then just have some flowers that shoot up, tulips and dandelions. And these types of things are flowers and plants that will come back every year. So if this is something where you know you want to get started, but you want something a little bit more easy or something to work with, mint is always going to come back, but it can be invasive. So you want to be cautious of maybe how or where you plant it. So maybe you prefer pots or certain areas. The ivy, if you prefer that on your floor, that is going to grow and can lengthen and take over, but you don't have to really care for it as much. It just kind of does its own thing. tulips and different spring flowers. We have a lot of them around in different areas. When I travel in Michigan or Ohio or whatnot that I see, and they're all starting to pop up, they tend to come back yearly on their own. So you want to maybe research about what you would like to welcome in your garden, and how much time or effort you would like to put in. Is this something where you just want to let it go and it do its own thing, and then you just enjoy that space and the relaxation? Or do you really want to get down and dirty with, getting in the dirt and digging and weeding and stuff? Strawberries are another one. They tend to come back on their own. Tomatoes, the little baby tomatoes, tiny tomatoes, tend to own. And so there's just the lavender tends to come back on its own. So just depending on what you would like to have in there and how much care you'd like to give. Those are different things you might want to think about as you welcome yourself to building your garden space, because this space is also hopefully a place that allows you to limit or eliminate stress. We don't want to add more stress to it. And it might be a little frustrating in the beginning. Like I mentioned, there might be mistakes that you make, but look at it from a point of view of being able to learn and overcome. So here's a few more different garden just ideas and planters. So these are good styles for community gardens, especially if you live in the city, or you get a designated area and you have the plants or lifted different areas to pot and kind of grow your vegetation, or you could put flowers in there depending on what you'd like to grow. And for those who have the very small spaces, or if you are just starting out with your garden or getting your fingers kind of dirty and you're starting your green thumb, starting something small with just predominantly like herb gardens are very popular. That's something that you could do. You could keep it indoors. You could grow it in your kitchen, and you still get that, like I said, that satisfaction, that gratification of you're learning, you're connecting to earth, to nature, to plant life. You're getting in the dirt, you're digging, and then you're getting to see your herbs and plants grow. We got some spinach over here. We got some, looks like cilantro and different things growing. So it looks like maybe some oregano. So just simple herbs, and you can find those. I've been to, there are different groups that do seed swapping. So you can get a lot of these types of seeds and things for free if you're just swapping or going to check out some stuff. People tend to, if you're going towards the end of the season, people tend to just take out their flowers in different beds and plants, and they will lay them on the front lawn and put it on like Craigslist or something saying, hey, free plants for next year. So then you can have your plants for then. So I see that now. My mom got some plants from a lady who just had them on the lawn. She wanted to redo her garden. So that's a nice free way to get these plants, especially if you're first starting out, getting your green thumb. Or just kind of working with things that you can use in your kitchen. Maybe you just want something that's beneficial for your diet. So working with these small little items, you don't have to really worry about bugs typically if they're indoors, and you can enjoy them in your recipes and food and things too. So it's a nice way to still keep it manageable and get started and connect with your wellness garden. Other ways are, I mentioned root veggies earlier. So a lot of fun things and experimental things that you can do with gardening or trying new things with plants and gardens is working with regenerating plant life from stems and leaves and food. So there are vegetables and root vegetables like ginger, potatoes, yams, celery, carrots, garlic, and onion, which are just a few where you can cut them and place a part of them in the water. Or you cut for the celery, you would cut and chop your green that you keep and eat and whatnot, and then you put the root in water and they will grow new life and start to grow more celery or grow more ginger. Aloe vera, that's another one. You can chop it clean, stick it in the dirt, and of course you want to water and manage and all that good stuff, but it will continue, it will regrow, it'll regenerate into a new plant. So, and my bamboo did that. I had a bamboo, it fell and it broke, and I actually took the other pieces and I put them in water, and now I have 2 bamboo. So a lot of these plants are miraculous, and they will start growing and regenerating from one plant. So once you start getting things going, then you have all this extra beneficial good stuff. That's actually a really fun experiment to do. There's quite a few. There's like Plant Daddy, and then there's Soul Farmer. There's all these people that trend on TikTok. There's another guy, I can't remember his name, on Instagram, where they show you how to regenerate these plants. They show you even how you can do it from seeds and things and fruit. There's one guy who was talking about the blueberries. You take the blueberries, you squeeze it, you put it lightly in the dirt, and you put a little plastic kind of cup over it that has the humidity, you spray it and water it or whatnot, but then you keep in this little humid little kind of like sanction cup, and it will start to sprout a new blueberry tree. And that's a fun experiment to do with your friends and family, or it's just a fun experiment to do with kids or clients or whatnot, is playing with these plants, getting with them, and learning how to regenerate them, which is a whole new exploration of itself. Other ways if you go into the colder climates or the sun and the north, where we start to lose the sun when winter and fall come, there are different plant lights you can get that you can keep over areas if you decide to do a green space or garden indoors. And they also make these hydroponic systems that you can find online that help you. This is another fun way to experiment and grow plant life that you can use with kids, with students in a classroom. You can do with family and friends, clients, and help someone that's just learning to garden. And then another popular thing that we really see with green spaces nowadays are these vertical gardens, which just means we're growing up. So we layer different pipes or wood or shells or whatever you decide to use, containers, and depending on the space, we grow our gardens up instead of out. So, and there are just different creative ways. This bottom right example is a really good one of a green space. They just have their tables and whatnot, and then they have their wall of green space in line with their shelving. So don't forget about the fun and safety of gardening. As I mentioned earlier, you want this to be a stress-free, hopefully experience. And so it's having fun. It's, don't be ashamed if you do not have a green thumb, if you're just getting started, or if you're an expert gardener and you're just looking to know the benefits of gardening and how beneficial it is for your body and mind, but also thinking about safety. If you are allowing kids to come in and help with your garden, just being cautious of the tools and mowing lawns, then you want to be cautious and of the bug life. So you maybe want to make sure you wear gloves and that you wash your hands after you come out of a garden or green space, especially if you are using different manures or organic soils and things, because they can have different bacterias in them that are beneficial for the ground, but maybe not so much if it sticks and gets in our nails and skin. So just taking those cautions of safety. I have a little typo there, but that's all right. And then, as I mentioned the beginning, we are animals and we are a part of the system. And that is why gardening or green spaces can be so important and so beneficial for our well-being. It welcomes us back to where we come from. It welcomes us back to nature. It takes us out of our chaotic schedules and busy lives and welcomes us to a space of relief and calm and just connection with that earth. As I mentioned, the bacteria, there's so much life in soil. And it's so important to welcome that connection and support that connection of the life in the soil, from the bugs to the bacterias to just things that we don't even know. It has its own little life, and including with the trees and plants and root systems, they have their own life. And so we get back to being a part of that system when we take time to garden. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I know that's kind of a mouthful, so if you have questions, feel free to let me know or drop them in the chat. You can reach out about resources or anything else going on with yoga or wellness or naturalist living. So. And then, oh yeah, I did want to show this. So True Leaf Market is one of the markets that I tend to use. They have been in existence since 1974, and they're vegetable gardening, sprouts, microgreens, and flowers and seeds. True Leaf they typically do non-GMO, all organic or natural products that they supply, but they also have different things. If you're just getting started, they have growing kits. They have microgreens, sprouts, and things that are already on the way. They have seeds, and they have tons of information on how to get gardening and starting with gardening, and different articles on building your gardens and whatnot. So they're so beneficial. I will drop them in the chat for everyone. Yeah, thanks for being here. There's the True Leaf link in the chat if you choose. I love using their stuff. They're so helpful, and you can give them a call and talk to them. The guys who are in charge and run and kind of kept the passion of True Leaf Market going are amazing. They're so sweet and just very, very helpful in giving advice and information about gardening. So I will stop the share if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. Angie, if you have anything on your mind, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Oh, thanks. I thought it was really informative.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, did you have any questions about anything or on your mind?
No, but I just wish I had one of those rooms where I could just have plants, surrounding me, but, maybe eventually.
Yeah, a lot of us, I feel like definitely working with different size spaces, small spaces. I currently moved back and I'm in transition from Texas to Ohio. And so I'm back in a very small space. And yeah, it's just like getting kind of creative in that way. It can be so beneficial to, even if you can't have a room like me, like I just have my 2 tiers right now, but
Right.
you can get, creative in shelving or just having a few plants to give you that connection and experience.
Yeah.
Or as I mentioned, like, yeah, if you have the time to connect with a local community garden, that's definitely another route to take. So
Yeah. No, you had some good ideas. I didn't realize there was all those different ideas.
Yeah, it could be. There's a lot out there. I've been in a lot of different places and spaces with just going out and teaching the yoga or going out and just living life, and even at like restaurants and stuff. And I'll be like, I never would have thought of like a wall of flowers or shelving. And
that's great. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
You too.
Bye.